the Plotcast podcast with the Potty Plotters. Sponsored by J. Parker's, experts in helping you grow your garden for less.
Hello and welcome back to the Potty Plotters Plotcast podcast. This is season 3, episode 4, and I'm Julia.
Well, I'm Elaine, but you always put that posh voice on, don't you, Julia? What's the matter with you?
It's a phone answering voice, you know that. So
right,
you know when your phone is, she puts a slightly different voice on.
Yes, she does, and she goes very quiet.
Nobody ever rings me, so I've got to...
That's rubbish.
Oh, okay. That's not right. It usually goes off now.
Okay.
Anyway, get on with it.
We've had lots of lovely people contact us, but before we go into that, let's have Gareth remind us as to how people can get in touch.
I can't see it because it's so bright. If you've got any questions or you'd like some advice, not that sort, then you can get in touch via Facebook and Instagram at Potty Plotters. You can email us naughtycorner@pottyplotters.uk, or you can check out the website pottyplotters.uk. Are you doing this bit or am I doing it?
You can carry on now, you're on a run.
This episode of the Plotcast is being brought to you by J. Parker's, a family-run business stretching over 3 generations who are passionate about sharing the gardening journey with you, supplying you with the best value bulbs, plants and seeds with unbeatable customer service. Use the code PLOTCAST15 to receive 15% off your order. Find them by searching online jparkers.co.uk.
The Plotcast podcast with the Potty Plotters.
Anyway, people have been in touch.
Oh, yes, they have. We've had a lovely message in from Fiona Clark, and she says, just loving your podcasts. My question
Don't worry, Fiona, you'll get better later.
My question is, I've got some beetroot morello seeds.
Binham.
Oh, no.
It's beetroot.
Right. Instructions say plant directly outside in March to June. Can I start them off inside, as I don't want any frost killing them off? I am a first-time allotmenteer and this is my first year. Thank you, ladies.
And what I would say is, well, if you've never tried them before, have a go.
In March time, probably best start them off in a tray or in some cells so that you can then look after them a little bit before you plant them out. And we actually start all of ours off in trays, don't we, Elaine?
Yeah, we do, simply because we get so many wildlife up here.
It's the mice that we're talking about,
and
isn't
rats,
it? Yeah.
and the squirrels. They all have a go at it. So what we do is we always start them off in a tray, as Julia said. We 3/4 fill them, first of all, with multi-purpose compost, and then we wet it first. So then the next thing that we do is we put in the seeds, and we do them at 1-inch intervals. So we actually end up doing about 50 seeds in a big tray, don't we?
Yeah.
And then multi-purpose compost over the top, and Bob's your uncle. Go for it. They'll be fine. Just leave them on the windowsill, but you put plastic tops on, don't you? I mean, you don't. I mean, on top of the trays, don't you?
There's a fashion statement.
Sometimes I do, just to keep the moisture in until they germinate, and then of course take the lids off because you don't want it damping off on the top. So yeah, and then let them grow on a bit and just harden them off a little bit before you put them outside.
And they are dead easy to put outside. The other thing is that if you haven't got seeds, you could try beetroot on seed tapes, Julia.
Oh yeah, they work brilliantly. And there's no spacing out because it's already done for you.
So if in doubt, have a go.
Well, Rachel's been in contact with us, and obviously she knows our love of planting in bras, but she's been dismantling hers and she's been using the underwire as a pricking out tool.
Yeah, now you might be amazed at that, but she's actually taken photographs and sent them. Yeah, she's used the wire.
Are they safe for work photos?
Yeah.
We're going to have an 18 slapped on us at this point, are we?
No, she's used the wire to piggle, that's a phrase.
Yeah.
But anyway, you piggle underneath the seedling, and then she's used it then to make the hole to put in the seedling in the new area. And it's worked beautifully. Honestly, you want to see the photos.
That's very inventive of her.
She's very clever.
We've also had a message in from Ella Jane Eyre, and she says, I was listening to your podcast on erections. Now, let's just clarify that in case people didn't listen to the last episode. We were talking about greenhouses, weren't we, Elaine? Greenhouses and sheds. Yes. And she says, we aren't allowed any on our plot. Only existing erections don't have to be taken down, though. It is private land, and as I understand it, to avoid problems with land use regulations and attention from the council. We are allowed those long, low, outdoor box things and cold frames, anything that is clearly movable and not at all permanent. There are also some greenhouses at one end that you can get to rent separately, although there is a long waiting list for these. It changes what you can grow a bit, but I do all my seed starting at home anyway, so it doesn't really bother me. And I have a lot of tomato varieties that are good for outdoors, and I also have a grow house in the shed for seed starting.
Ella mentioned cold frames, and last time we mentioned your chip shop that you've opened on the plot, and we're sat next to it now, and I think I've been vindicated because it does look like one of those cabinets you get at the chippy.
But it is interesting to hear that some sites will not allow structures, whereas obviously we get to benefit from having the polytunnels, the greenhouses, and I suppose that's something to be conscious of, and that it might be about the positioning of the site in terms of whether people have got public access to them. All kinds of things will stop councils allowing people from having them, but I think it's sad actually that people can't have the structures.
It is, but a lot of them are private landlords as well, and private landlords don't want the hassle of any permanent structures, because if they decide that they're then going to sell it, they've got to get rid of everything. So it saves them knocking everything down.
The Plotcast podcast with the Potty Plotters, sponsored by J. Parker's.
Right then. Well, we've been in the Tangerinery a little while ago, and we were in there all day yesterday because we've had some glorious weather. But let's get some updates, actually. So we've got chilies, Julia. Have you got any chilies there?
I've got chilies. Chilies are at home because even though we've had the most glorious week this week, it has still been dropping chilly at night time. So they have been kept at home, as have my dahlias that I am starting to. Now, these are obviously not the ones I saved, Elaine, because you know they rotted. But these are my new ones, and I've now set them with the tops exposed so that I can start taking cuttings, and they're already starting to shoot, so I'm quite excited about that.
How are your dahlias doing?
Fantastic. Honestly, this is my serious face now, Gareth. Keeping them over winter in cat litter absolutely worked. It wasn't used cat litter, and it was non-clumping. Otherwise, we'd have had to chisel them out. But they are in my greenhouse, and the shoots on them are amazing. Can I
just put this out there straight away now? Copyright us. So if anybody does do it, they have to pay you for it now.
Yeah, but they have worked, and I have done my J. Parkers as well. All of those that arrived very nicely, and I've labelled them all up. And they're all in my other greenhouse, so let's see what happens with those.
And also sweet peas. Now, it's starting to look a bit like a garden centre on the allotment, because we've done loads and loads of sweet peas, because as usual, we save our seeds and we like to give away lots and lots of sweet peas, but also we've both invested in new different varieties for different reasons. So you've gone for the ones that are in hanging baskets, Elaine?
Yeah, they're Pink Cupid, and they're a dwarf variety, and they are going in the hanging baskets and also containers, but you won't be taking them as a bloom, so they haven't got the long stems and nothing. But I'm quite interested as to how that will work.
Can I ask for a friend or relative?
Yeah.
Is it too late for my friend/relative to do the sweet peas in the way that we've done them for the last couple of seasons? Is it too late now?
No, we're doing them every week at the moment, aren't we? You can carry on right the way through to the end of May.
And the spring bulbs, Elaine, I've seen that your plot's starting to come into colour.
Yeah, I've got everything out, as it were. Yeah, everything looks very pretty at the moment, so hopefully if the weather continues this way, that we should get loads more bulbs out. The narcissus are out, the tay-to-tay, the hyacinths smell beautiful as you walk by, so everything's all happening. It's gorgeous.
The lasagna is really starting to...
Oh, is it?
Yeah, so when we came back, so we're on episode 4, when we came back we sort of said there's probably, I think there's 1 or 2 shoots. Had a look at it this morning and it's kind of covered over the top now, so there's quite a lot of shoots coming through.
Contact the Potty Plotters anytime on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram at Potty Plotters, or email naughtycorner@pottyplotters.uk.
Second thing to talk about is, what are you planting now, Elaine?
Well, I'm going to do some chard and beetroot, because both of those are very topical, and I think both are very happy in this weather. Got dwarf broad beans, and they only took a fortnight to get to where they are, and they look fantastic. They look very healthy, and of course they're going in the meal barrow. And for those of you who can't remember what that is,
it's where we send you to stand outside and we stay in the wall.
Yeah, that's right. That's what normally happens. But it is a wheelbarrow that has got holes in its bottom because every every bottom needs a hole, otherwise you're getting a mess. So what we're going to do is we'll fill those with compost.
Barry came up my path on Tuesday with a big box of seeds, and I think it was a little hint to the things that he wanted me to plant for him. And so one thing I'm planting for him is sprouts and cauliflowers.
Brilliant.
I don't know why he wants me to do them, but I think I have more
why not?
I think because I have more success than he does. And another thing on the plot, I don't know if you'll notice this behind, but can you remember that tall raised bed that I built? Really tall raised bed, and we mixed in loads of sand with the soil. And so what I've done at the moment, I've literally popped a piece of polycarbonate on the top just to warm it up a little bit, and then I'm going to set some carrot seeds in there. So
I
that's
thought
my
as much.
plan.
Yes. I've been and had a look and thought that's what you were up to. Nosying for sure. Well done.
Dead good brilliant bits. The Potty Plotters Plotcast.
Well, we do use a lot of labels, plant labels, that are all plastic. We've cut our own up and made them out of all kinds of things. We've done metal ones, we've done them out of yoghurt parts, you name it, we've done it. We've even done them out of Coke tins when we chopped them up, do you remember? But they really do take a lot of doing and writing and so forth. And of course, every pot does need to have the label on it and the variety, not just what it is, i.e. tomato, they want to know it's a red robin, or whether or not it's another different variety. Is there another different variety?
Yes, there's loads.
Okay,
many,
then right.
There's many varieties of tomato, as you well know.
But they do drive you mad when you're writing loads of them. So
this was an idea we came up with at the pub, wasn't it, Elaine?
Photocopy.
It was, yeah. No.
So that'd be a dead good idea as well.
A dead good, brilliant idea is this, though. Get a chalk pen, the 99p from the range, and all that you do is you write on the plastic pot, and then all you have to do is wipe it off with a wet rag, or actually I use my thumb after I've licked it and wipe it round, and that's it clean again. I just thought I'd tell you that. It's there, it's done, it's magical. So why not do that? You're not wasting any time. It's only chalk when all's said and done. 99p.
Bargain.
The Plotcast podcast with the Potty Plotters, sponsored by J. Parker's.
Well, Julia, I mean, I know it's your go, but I found it quite funny, actually, recording this with two of our very famous guests.
Very famous guests.
Very. Who are they?
Well, we know them as Dean and Michaela, but actually, privately, we've been calling them Mr. and Mrs. Toad, haven't we?
We have. And it's just a thing, isn't it? Because they are geniuses when it comes to toad patrols. I tell you what, though, they've made mincemeat of Colin. Colin the caterpillar has now gone, it's fair to say.
Yes, and we love toads, but normally we're talking about nematodes, but we know very little about toads themselves, other than that we occasionally find them on our plot, and they're usually buried. Is that where they're usually hiding, Dean?
Yeah, I mean, you know, having toads on an allotment is amazing because, of course, one of the things you're plagued with in an allotment is potentially slugs and that kind of thing, and toads love them. So they're really your allies on an allotment, toads are. The more you can get, the better, really. Any creepy crawlers they will have, not the pollinators so much, because of course they fly, so you want the pollinators, but the things that crawl, the creepy crawlers on the ground that might be tempted to eat your carrots or your cauliflower or whatever, your toads will have. And in answer to your question, yes, they do. At this time of year, they're heading to water, which we'll talk about in a moment. But then they only stay in the water for a few weeks, toads. They've got very dry skin, so they can survive on the allotments, but they do like to bury themselves to keep warm and to hide from predators. They'll emerge at dusk to come out to feed, and then by dawn they've buried themselves again.
You see, I find toads very interesting in that when we say they bury themselves, they dig backwards.
They do, and they love small spaces, so they will bury themselves, but they also love finding crevices to hide in. And a few weeks ago at home, I got quite a large terracotta pot that was at an angle for some reason, and I decided to repot the plant that was in it. And when I got to the very bottom, there was a toad in the bottom of the actual pot. It had gone through the hole in the terracotta pot. It must have squeezed through because it looked a lot bigger than the hole, and so they just love looking for crevices. On the subject of which, to encourage toads onto your allotment, here's a crevice that I've brought for you. So.
We don't say that every day.
No, there you go. I know you long
toad
crevices.
crevice?
It's a toad crevice, yeah.
No such thing.
There
really?
is, yeah.
Where's the best place to put it then?
Well, anyway, you like really. I'd put it somewhere, out of sight, a little way out of the way. But they love finding somewhere dark to hide in. So they only bury themselves really if they can't find a crevice. So there you've got your crevice now, and you might get a few in there actually. Frogs might join them as well.
And do you put it on the top of the soil, or do you have to? Yeah.
On the top of the soil, it's got a little sort of arch in it, and the smaller you can make that in a way, the better, because they love squeezing through into these things, and they will stay there, wait there all day, then come out at night time to eat your pests.
Are they quite shy then? Or is it just that they're keeping away from their predators?
They're keeping away from predators, yeah. We'll talk in a minute about why there's a lot of them around at the moment. But I was somewhere the other week where there are lots of toads, and you could see the owls hovering overhead waiting to grab them. So even at night time, there are predators.
We went to do a talk not so long ago, and one lady came up for whatever reason, and she said, I want to talk to you about toads. Now, we weren't talking about toads at the time, and I thought, well, how interesting. But anyway, she went on to say that every year, her and her husband kidnapped even, a toad, and they kept the toad all year in their greenhouse to eat all of the creatures that would be in the soil. So then they'd let them go, or it go, and then reintroduce it, kidnap it again, later in the year and put it back in the greenhouse.
I mean,
Never heard of it.
I'm not sure that's strictly legal, but if it works, it works. I mean, I think you're not meant to incarcerate them, although I suppose a greenhouse is still outdoors, isn't it? But if you're looking to kidnap toads, don't kidnap them. But
it's not a good thing.
They're on the march at the moment, and it's a really good time. And Michaela last year said, I've joined Toad Patrol, and I was so fascinated by this that I joined as well.
Michaela.
And the rest is history. Michaela, tell us about Toad Patrol. What do you do? Do you have to dress up as one so they don't?
Yes, you do if you go. No, all you need is a high-vis vest, a bucket, and wellies. That's pretty much. Oh, and a torch. Yeah, head torch, so you can you like this scanning with your head to see what's in front of you.
Where are you looking for them though? I mean, are you up and down fields or?
Well, they pick a variety of sites, don't they?
Yeah. They've got a homing instinct, so wherever they were laid as spawn and grew up as tadpoles, when they leave the pond, they'll go up to a couple of miles away from that pond, but they have a real homing instinct, and they hibernate on land in a crevice. And then when the weather starts to warm up again, they're triggered to migrate back to the pond. So there are three things that you're looking for. First, it will only happen after dark. Secondly, it will only happen if the temperature hits about 11 degrees Celsius. And thirdly, if there's been rain or it is raining, it will cause them to migrate in huge numbers, and it's happening in March. It happens so probably towards the end of the season now, but in March we know where the hot spots are, where a lot of them get killed because they have to cross the roads to get there. So Toad Patrol is there where the hot spots are, making sure that toads don't get squished. That's what we do, isn't it?
Yeah,
why are they moving? Why did they move at this time of year?
They're heading to the ponds, aren't they, to breed? So it's, I don't understand how it all happens, but it's like they all wake up at the same time and think, right, come on lasses, both of them, we're gonna go now. And one of the sites I went to last year was at an old mill, and it's not actually, I mean, the traffic can go through, but there's not a massive amount of traffic, so it's good. But I went down there with my torch and I hadn't seen anything as I was walking down, but then all of a sudden my head torch just caught hundreds and hundreds of toads, just like in the light, just all hopping across the road, heading towards the water at the mill. It's great, but it's really sad sometimes because you do see traffic coming, and some people will stop and they're great. They'll stop and ask what you're doing, but some people just don't seem to care enough. So they need people to help them across the road, because it seems a bit dramatic. If they're heading that way anyway, why not just let them get on with it? Yeah. But the more you can save.
So if you see a car coming, have you got a lollipop stick?
I would like to have a lollipop stick. Yeah. Maybe that's something we can suggest to the group, because then you can say, like, stop, because it's quite sad when you see the cars go through and you see them in the headlights, and hope that most of them will make it.
Because a female will be making her way to the pond carrying hundreds and hundreds of eggs.
Yeah.
Toad spawn isn't like frog spawn. Your frog's laid in a clump, but toad's laid in strings. But she'll be carrying 300, 400, 500 eggs. So if you get squished on the way there, that's 500 tadpoles you've lost, and that's going to impact the population of toads. As we've discussed, they're great for helping with gardens and allotments, but the numbers are going down. Like so much of our wildlife, the numbers are falling. So this is what Toad Patrol does, Toad Rescue does. It makes sure that they get there and aims to keep the numbers high. The instruction that you get is, before you help a toad across the road, make sure you know which way it's going, because of course you can do more harm than good, because once they've spawned, both the males and the females make their way very quickly back to their feeding ground, back to the allotment. And if you think, oh, hang on, they're on the way to spawn, what you're doing is putting them back on the other side of the road and hindering their survival rather than helping. Yeah.
There was one year I remember, but it was during the day, and I therefore think that there were frogs. I came up here, and we've got paths leading all the way around the allotments, and it was in an afternoon. It wasn't a particularly nice day, and I saw little tiny froglets. And there wasn't one. It was like a plague. Honestly, I'm not exaggerating. It was before the days where we'd all got cameras and things on our phones, even phones, to tell you the truth. And there was a mass exodus from the allotments across, and they were all going to the water, because we're surrounded by water here. So we do get a lot of frogs and toads and all kinds of different wildlife. But why would they all be going? They were all going in the same direction. The magpies and crows were having a feast. And they were picking them off, but there were thousands of them. What's that all about?
Well, of course, they start life as spawn. They grow legs and lose their tail. They turn into froglets or toadlets. And because we're talking about huge numbers, thousands, tens of thousands of them in a pond maybe, you only need a couple of thousand of them to leave at the same time, and you've got that, what you describe as a plague there. So that they will, and there are certain, they do spread out the rate at which they grow. So some leave early, some leave late, which is of evolutionary significance to help them survive. But in the middle of summer, round about, June, July, that's when they peak. So you will see lots of them leaving, and they're driven to get away from the pond as quickly as they can, because they'll be looking for small, tiny aphids and things like that to eat. And so they're driven away from the water. So they have a huge instinct to move away from that water. So what you'll have seen there is hundreds and thousands of them just making a run for it.
And it's fair to say then, from what you're saying, we should encourage more frogs and toads on the allotments, because they're doing good. I mean, we talk about nematodes, and we talk about all kinds of different ways that you can get rid of snails and slugs, but actually, if we got more toads and frogs, we wouldn't need any of that.
No. All we need to do is train them to climb up the rose bushes.
Why don't you help the frogs cross the road? Why is it only the toads?
Well, if there was a frog on the road, we'd help it. We're not going to say, no way, no, we don't want you. But one of the big differences between frogs and toads is that frogs have got really strong hind legs, and they can jump, and they'll get to a road and they go, jump, 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 and they're gone in a matter of seconds. Toads, although they can hop, their hind legs are quite weak. So whereas a frog will jump a couple of metres, a toad might manage a couple of centimetres. So toads tend to crawl, which is their quickest way of walking. And of course, crawling across a road takes quite some time when you're only 3 or 4 centimetres big.
Oh.
So what can we do then to encourage more frogs and toads on our allotments? You've been round, you've been escorted round today. So what do you think, having looked at us, what it is that we can do besides putting down our new prize here? How lovely, thank you. What can we do?
Well, it's a beautifully kept allotment, and it's clear that you do have wildlife in mind, but it's leaving a couple of wild areas, to just grow where the grass and so on might just get a little bit taller. Also keeping an area where there's perhaps some moss, so it's slightly moist, especially in summer, because frogs in particular dry out really quickly. Toads are more resistant; they've got quite warty, thick skin, so they can resist the drying out. But frogs in particular do need it. And at home, I've got a tub, several tubs with plants in, and in the summer I'll water them each night, and you get frogs during the day in the tubs. I don't know how they know how to do it, but you've experienced this, Michaela, haven't you, with frogs in buckets and things as well?
Yeah. I mean, we've got all sorts of like little water sources. You know, you put like a tray down for the birds and things like that. And sometimes you'll go out at night and there's a toad in the bird water bowl on the grass. And so anywhere where you leave water, I think they'll come to it anywhere because they just want sort of like moist areas, don't they, to hide in.
And also micro ponds, you know, you don't need to have a big pond. An old sink sunk into the ground or anything like that, filled with water, will attract a huge amount of wildlife. Huge.
You get them in your drains as well. We used to have a really big one living in our drain at home, and it was the drain from the shower. And if we were ever cleaning the shower, we used to have to go downstairs and get the toad out.
Is that literally a toad in a hole?
And you can get drain ladders as well for frogs and toads. One of the things that the toad rescue do is go around and look for culverts at the side of the road where they might fall into. And at one point we'd be lifting the grating up, shining torches in and putting rubber gloves on and picking them out. But these days there are ladders down into the grates so they can climb out.
If you could see our faces.
I was thinking I'd like to make some.
Oh, yeah, toad ladders, they're a
sort
thing.
of like a hamster thingy.
Yeah, it's that kind of thing.
I want to thank Michaela and Dean for coming and telling us all about toads. It's brilliant. And also, he's just given us permission not to really tidy the area around the muck bed now. So that's fantastic.
I wonder if they like muck.
It's warm, so probably, it'll
Bit of leaf mulch, they like that.
They do like that. They do, yeah.
That's the only area I've not got round to tidying, so let's leave it.
You might be surprised what you find there.
The Plotcast Podcast with the Potty Plotters.
So this episode of the Plotcast is being brought to you by J. Parker's, who are a leading bulb and plant retailer specialising in supplying exceptional quality and value products for over 90 years. So why not let J. Parker's help you grow your garden for less and benefit from their vast experience and product range of over 2,000 products available online. They're offering all listeners to the Plotcast an exclusive 15% off all orders. Visit jparkers.co.uk and use the code Plotcast15 at the checkout.
Well, Julia, it's asparagus. Actually, I'm going to turn around and just have a look. I can't see oat in your bed.
No,
asparagus bed.
Yeah, it's not ready. I'm glad you
it's not ready?
I'm glad you clarified it was my asparagus bed you were talking about. But
She's got a really good eyesight. If she could see your bed from here, have you made it?
It's in the shed.
The bed in the shed.
No, it's not the time for the asparagus to be growing. But the reason I asked for it to be included in the episode was because we were doing a talk the other night, and a lady came up to me and she was dead excited. She'd bought one of the asparagus from the garden centre, you know, the dried ones
like you get dahlia tubers.
And she'd bought one of them, and she'd obviously got a raised bed that was about 1 metre square, and she'd plonked it in the middle. And
is that not the right thing to do?
And then she said, well, you know, what do I need to do now? And I thought, actually, now is the time to be telling people what they do need to do if they want to set up a proper asparagus bed.
The asparagus season is really, really short, isn't it?
Yes.
But I've started to see it again in the supermarkets in the last few weeks because I think we had some a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
What is the actual asparagus season in the UK?
So normally it's around, I mean, it depends how early it comes through, but normally it's around first or second week in April through to middle of June, and that's just about it. But you might be seeing some in the supermarkets because people have started to grow them in the polytunnels, and as we know, that gives things more of an advance on what is growing outside. Of course, the difficulty with growing them in polytunnels is that, as I've mentioned before, asparagus is really a long-term commitment plant in the fact that it's in the ground for about 20-25 years, and it's really only by year 4 when you are starting to be able to harvest it fully. So I'm quite surprised that people would give up a whole polytunnel for it, but obviously commercially, if people have got that space, that is obviously why they're doing it. And it is so beautiful. English cut asparagus, when it's in the right season, there's nothing better. But now is the time. We're in the middle of March here. If you are thinking about setting one up, get yourself on that internet, rather than going to the garden centres and buying a shriveled up one, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it.
Sorry, it's just the way you put that.
Well, normally...
The last episode we did was about erections, and now you're talking about shriveled up ones.
Yeah, the ones that are in the garden centres, they've been dug up already and they've already pretty dehydrated by the time you're taking them. Whereas if you go onto internet and order some now is the perfect time to be going to asparagus suppliers. I'm going to give a mention to Blackmore because they're the ones I've had them from in the past, and they are the ones that they get great reviews if you look at the asparagus crowns that they're sending out. I'm sure there are lots of other good supplies, but that's who I had mine off. And they literally will dig them out the ground in the time for planting them, which is around April time. So you've got over the next couple of weeks to actually get your bed ready.
So how do they arrive then, Julia? I mean, have they got great big clumps of soil attached to them?
They
I'm imagining the postage and packaging for that one.
Yeah,
it's expensive enough now.
HGV turns up with an asparagus crown on the back.
No, normally the soil has been knocked off them, or, they're quite sandy normally when they arrive. Yeah. So they've been planted obviously in sandy conditions, which is perfect because they do need a nice drained bed, a free draining bed. So that's perfect. And they literally arrived here. The ones that I had, I think they arrived in almost newspaper, and they are good to go. So you don't need to pre-soak them or anything like that. And you can put them in the ground when you are ready to get going with them. And they come and they're almost like, well, I was going to say like an octopus, but they've actually got usually more bits coming off them. And they're beautiful. You can see that they're nice, healthy plants. And as I say, now is the time to be getting your bed ready. So if you decide on where you want to plant your asparagus, they like sunshine, they like free draining soil, and most importantly, choose somewhere where there's no frost pockets within the soil, and also that it's an area that you can dedicate to your asparagus for the next 20, 25 years.
Which is quite a commitment, actually, isn't it?
It is, and it's worth it. I mean, I've set mine up in a raised bed because I've not got anywhere on the ground, and of course we are prone to flooding on this site, so I've got a raised bed. It's about what,
8 foot by 4 foot.
is it? Have you measured it?
I know what they are.
Okay.
Yeah, I did a lot of them last year.
Okay. And it's about 40-50 centimetres off the ground, maybe 2 foot off the ground, something like that. 2 foot, all right, 2 foot off the ground. And at the bottom I've put lots of broken crocks in there, and I've added lots of sand into the soil that's in there.
We put a load of muck in there as well.
We put a load of muck in because I like to feed it, and of course feeding is important, but we do that at the back end of the year once we've cut down the ferns. But now is the time, if you are thinking about it and you want to set yourself an asparagus bed, select your area, make sure it's cleared of perennial weeds. That's really, really important, because once they are set and once you've put your asparagus in, then you won't really be able to dig deep in there, because otherwise you could actually damage the roots of the asparagus. So ideally no perennial weeds, and then get on internet and order some and get ready for them.
How many have you got in that bed?
In that bed I've got 12. And now I think I'm into year 5 of them, and I mean last year
was brilliant.
Last year I was giving them away. I'd got that many. I mean, there's only 2 of us in our house, and I absolutely loved them, but there were so many. And this year I'm hoping for even better, because of course the more established the plant is, the better the crop I'll get.
So just get ready now.
Get ready.
Get them ordered.
Yeah, but don't plonk them in the middle of your bed.
The Plotcast podcast with the Potty Plotters, sponsored by J. Parker's.
Onions and shallots. Now,
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about those just briefly because of a lady who asked a question exactly the same as you when we went out and about, and she was saying, what onions do I set? And I said, I've now gone past the stage of setting onions. Now, I know that we grow onions.
Yeah.
We grow them from seed, we grow them from sets, but SETS. I actually now prefer to grow shallots. I love shallots.
Because you get a lot of shallots for your shallot, don't you?
Exactly, yes.
They're more
tell
economical.
us about it then, Gareth.
So from each onion, you get one onion.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Which, to be fair, 1 for 1 doesn't sound like a very good deal. But from each shallot, you get 5.
There you go.
You see,
it.
I have been listening.
Good Lord. And do you know
So
what
which
they're
one-
called?
Shallots. Because you get lots of shallots for your shallot.
What do you call them,
They're
Elaine?
actually called daughters. And my dad had 5 daughters.
Oh.
Just thought I'd tell you that.
They never
Anyway.
have sons.
Well, no, because we want some productivity off them, Julia. So we'll leave it at that.
Ooh, wow, that's brave.
But yeah, that's why I do it. I grow them exactly the same as I do any onions. You can grow them from seed or you can grow them from sets. All different types of varieties. I really like Golden Gourmet because they're a rounded variety. But you're doing some oblong or something, aren't you?
I'm doing some oblong, but they're almost they're onions rather than shallots, actually.
Okay.
So yes, I've decided rather than sowing onions from sets, I'm going to have a go at growing them from seed. And the reason for that is because the sets are obviously when you get them as baby onions, they're actually 1-year-old onions that have been stunted in growth for the next season. And so by the time you come to growing them for the second season, they are more prone to actually bolt and set seeds. So in actually sowing them from seeds, it means they'll see the season all the way through.
And you'll find that most people who are big in horticulture and certainly the giant veg people usually grow their
giant
own.
veg people.
Giant veg people.
But they grow them all from seed.
Yeah.
And of course, Kev, plot 2, he's growing giant onions again this year, and he set his on Boxing Day. Traditionally, that's the time to do it. Okay. So he set seed for can't remember what variety
but
was
they're
on.
huge.
Was it exhibition? Is it probably?
It is an exhibition variety, but we'll wait and see.
Can't wait to see his big onions.
Can you? Oh, I can wait. Well, I just want to say a big thanks to Dean and Michaela. Who knew there was so much to know about toads, Elaine?
You know, every time I look at a toad, I'll think of Dean now. Is that right? It's not right.
It's a bit wrong, that is.
It is, yeah. But you know what I mean.
And if you want to follow us on the social media thingies, that'd be brilliant. And you can post us little messages. And send us some pictures of your plots. Tell us what you've been up to. Tell us what you're getting up to in the garden. We'd love to know where you are and what you're up to.
I love it. I love looking at everybody else's. I think
Because
it's because
you're
we're
Do you get inspiration from other people's?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you do. And actually, we've always said to people who come to our site, walk around the site, have a look at what other people are doing. And if you can, go to other sites where they have open days, because it's brilliant to see. Once something catches on one site, it seems to go all the way through.
Like wildfire.
Wildfire. Well, we don't want no fires. There was a fire on that field behind us.
Was there? When?
A couple of years ago. Remember when it was 40 degrees?
No.
Don't remember that, Julia.
4 degrees, yeah.
Anyway, what are we doing next time?
Oh, next time, well, we're talking about dwarf plants.
I like that.
Yeah, you've done that for me, haven't you? Because I'm sure.
You can reach the top of them then,
thank
can't
you.
Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed you've mentioned beetroot again. Is that just to wind Gareth up?
Yeah. I'm going to get beetroot in every episode if I can now. I love beetroot. Have I said that before?
I might have mentioned it once or twice.
So versatile, so scrumptious. I'm going to disguise it in more ways than one this time and see if he notices.
The Plotcast podcast with the Potty Plotters, sponsored by J. Parker's, is an Amberland Media production.